Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the ToLiss Airbus A321 and X-Plane 11, and this time we'll be looking at the autopilot again, and this is the part 2. If you haven't seen part 1 where we talk about the climb modes, then I recommend watching it first. It'll give you more context on this video. I also have other videos on the setup if you need any help getting set up to this point or loading up the FMGC. Okay, so let's crack on with the video, thank you. So here we are now getting very close to our descent arrow, so I'm going to bring up the MCDU progress page. So once we reach that descent point, we would normally ask air traffic control for some sort of descent, or they know roughly where we'd like to descend, so they will tell us earlier, or they may have other reasons like other aeroplanes around. So because in the FCU altitude window I still have just 35,000, the airplane won't do anything at that down arrow, it's just going to say decelerate. So it'll give us a decelerate message on the PFD saying it wants to descend. So I'll let that happen very shortly. So first of all, I'm going to show you the vertical speed in descent. It's very similar to the way we climbed using vertical speed. I'll provide a link to my video on the climb modes that we used for our departure in the Airbus. And here we go, the green arrow comes down now, so the Airbus is going to expect us to descend from here because that is the vertical profile it's got planned. And here's our decelerate message. The reason it says decelerate is because if we slow down, we can then do a faster descent, which will mean we use more drag and can descend quicker onto the profile. And as we see, our vertical deviation, VDEV, is getting higher. So we are 800 feet high, 900 feet high and increasing. So let's pretend that air traffic control have given us a clearance to descend. I'm going to do exactly as we did in the climb. So let's say it was to descend to flight level 150. So I'm going to set 15,000 in there, or 150. We can see it on our PFD, it's in there. But it won't do anything until I give it a mode. And I'm going to start in vertical speed. So I'm going to wind down. It starts at 1500, and then when I have 2 dots, I'm going to pull it. And there we go, vertical speed 1500. And now we are descending. The airplane will try and keep its speed here, and it will descend at 1500 feet per minute. If I set a vertical speed that's too fast, the airplane will accelerate above the target speed. Because as you can see, it's coming all the way back, and soon it will reach idle thrust. And then it can't bring the engines back anymore, so we'll start to accelerate on the speed because there's not enough drag. If that happens, you need to either change mode or use the speed brakes to try and keep your speed where you want it. So it seems to be working out okay. But we're actually high on the profile. As I said, our MCDU thinks we're already 3,000 feet high, which is pretty high. So what I can do is, instead of using vertical speed, or I could increase it, but as I said, we might see the speed increase. I'm going to go for a open descent. So if I do 2 dots on the altitude knob and then click, we get thrust idle, so it commands idle thrust, and open descent, which is like the opposite of open climb we saw earlier. So the aeroplane will keep thrust idle and it will descend at the speed we have set. So this will be the quickest way to descend usually. If we want to descend even faster, if I increase the speed target, which I could do using the speed up, we will accelerate, and it will have to lower the nose to accelerate, so we'll descend even quicker with more drag, which will get us back on profile. So here we go, we're starting to regain the profile. Another way to descend would be to use managed descent. Again, just like managed climb, I'll go to 1 dot on the altitude knob, and then if I press, it pushes in, and we get a little dot, and it changes to DES mode. And now we can see we've got the magenta target, which is the target it wants to fly, and then we have these little half arrows. So the airplane will now fly within this speed range to get onto profile. So as we are high, it's going to accelerate up to this arrow to increase the drag and get us back onto profile. If we were low, it would fly at the slower end of the scale. And the idea is to use an efficient, less fuel way of doing it. So it will stay at thrust idle, as you can see, and then fly within that speed range to maintain the profile. Or depending on the constraints, it may not stay at thrust idle. But that's the Airbus programmed way of doing it. And we look here, we're slowly coming into the profile. So in managed DES, it will regain that green dot. And that should meet all the altitude constraints along the profile, these magenta numbers. Obviously, you check that carefully on your charts and so on. So here we go, we can see it accelerating to get more drag. If I want to help it out, I can use the speed brakes. So I bring those out. and you'll see now that the airplane starts to lower the nose more, and the speed will come back eventually as it regains the profile. Maybe we'll do a bit more. There we go, speed coming back, and the rate of descent increasing. I don't think it needs that for now. It seems to be managing. If it thinks you are too high and you're not going to manage the profile or to regain the profile without using the speed brakes, it will say more drag on the PFT. I'm not sure if this ToLiss Airbus does that actually, but the real Airbus does. So here we go, we're getting back onto the profile now, and it's within its speed range, so it's happy. Vertical speed, we can also push to level off, which works in exactly the same way as it did in the climb. So if I go to 1 dot and press, it'll immediately go to speed out, but like I say, the real airplane, I would expect that to go to VS0, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to go back to the altitude, and I'm going to go 1 dot for a managed descent thrust idle DES. The same rules apply here. So in managed descent mode, I need to be on my green string. If air traffic gives us a heading, so let's say they make us come right heading 160, so I'll put in 160, and then with 2 dots I can click and it will pull. We've gone into heading mode, and you hear that triple click. It goes click, click, click. Because instead of DES, it's had to revert to a basic mode, so it's reverted to VS minus 2800. That's because it can't fly in a managed descent mode because we aren't following the track it's expecting us to, so it needs us to give it more instructions. As we can see, this vertical speed is too fast for that speed, so the airplane, even at idle thrust, is starting to accelerate. So what I'll do now is I'll go to double dots and pull and get open descent, and that way it'll apply that speed as an idle thrust descent. Great. I'm going to pretend that air traffic sends us direct to a waypoint, so let's go direct to Midhurst. Select it, direct. As we can see, the PFT, we've gone back to nav mode, so now I can re-engage managed descent as it recalculates profile. So 1 dot, click, speed, descent, nav, and there we go. So those are some of the ways we can descend the Airbus A321. You'll notice it started off flying in a Mach number, and then it automatically transitions to a speed, which I'll do another video on another time, some of the differences with that. If we are really high, I'm just going to pretend that we've been cleared down to flight level 80. If we are really high, we have one more option, which is the Expedite button, which is here, Expedite. If I click on this button, you see Expedite descent, and it's going to now accelerate to 340 knots. Very rare to use this, it's quite an aggressive mode in some ways, and the airplane will just keep accelerating. You have to be careful if you're in turbulence, you don't want to overspeed, and this speed is 340 knots is very close to our overspeed. But you'll see it will ignore the vertical profile now, and it's just going to go down as fast as it can at thrust idle. In climb, that will mean the same thing in the climb sense, so it will go to thrust climb, and the speed will come back as it tries to climb at the greatest angle. So here we go, really accelerating down now. So this shows you how using your speed increase will mean that you'll lose height quicker, because we've got more drag on the aeroplane. Of course, when we get lower, we'll need to remove that speed again. And there we go, 340 knots. And now if I want to return, same as before, I can do either. I'm going to go to 2 dots, pull, open descent, and now it's going to return to our 278, which we can see here. I hope this has been useful for you. Just some of the modes on descending the Airbus A321. I'll be doing another video on some of the more modes of the approach and so on. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on this video or anything else you'd like to see. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching.